Have you ever been jolted awake in the middle of the night? Not necessarily because of thirst or the need for the bathroom. Such a sudden urge to wake up because your mind was so desperate to end its rest. So desperate that maybe your body hasn't realized it yet. You try to stretch that kink out of your neck, but you can't quite move. You try to flex a finger, but nothing happens. Normally, this wouldn't be an issue. You've heard of sleep paralysis before, and you know it's not life-threatening. You just need to run out the clock until your body can sync up with your brain. Shouldn't be long now. Just be a little patient. But you realize how hard being patient can be when the shadow in the room sort of shifts. This isn't too out of the ordinary. The darkness has played tricks with your eyes before. You just have to ignore it. But how can you ignore it when it starts getting closer? As the shadow starts to loom over you, you're desperately trying to move any part of your body. The slightest give would send a wave of relief over your body. But it feels like you have no control. Even when you can move, your limbs fly wildly with no real precision in your movement. You would even overshoot trying to grab your glasses. As the dark creature now reaches you, you realize how helpless you are, trapped in a living nightmare. This is exactly how I felt using the controls in Oxide Room 104. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Oxide Room 104, a game I've seen on sale a lot within the last few years. I'm a pretty big horror fan, but I've mainly stuck to the more big budget mainstream type of games. Your Outlast, Resident Evils, and now Silent Hills. But lately I've been getting deeper into the indie scene. Deeper. I've moved from the shore to the shallow end. Anyways, I'm always in the mood for a scary game, and I wanted to try something fresh and new rather than just play through RE2 for the 20th time. Despite my opening, I don't want to rag on this game too hard because it is a cheaper indie title. I don't expect developers to be masters of their craft within the first couple of projects, and I don't mind shelling out a few bucks for these smaller games while they try to fund their dream profession. But there are just some times where this feeling of inexperience can create some irritating moments in a game. Deaths that feel almost cheap, like I wasn't given the right tools to thrive on my own. What made it all the more frustrating is that I can see the vision they were going for. I like the idea of this slightly experimental style of games, trying to innovate on what can cause a reaction of fear out of the player, taking risks that can either enhance the gameplay and atmosphere of a game, or can alienate certain players altogether. It shows a real love for both the medium and their ideas, going off of their own passion rather than what they think would actually sell. Do these risks pay off? Help me figure it out while we lock ourselves into the Platinum for Oxide Room 104. When I looked through YouTube to see how many people made videos about the game, my search results came up pretty bleak. Most of them were streamers trying to get a reaction rather than reviews or critiques. I try to not let this affect my opinion of a game, especially when it comes to horror games. I get that I'm not as critical when it comes to these as others might be, or as I am with other genres. They usually get a little more leeway for me for certain gameplay choices in the name of fear or creating a more tense atmosphere. I tend to think of it like reviews for scary movies. They aren't for everyone, so a lower score or lack of reviews usually doesn't influence me. There are so many indie horror games out there that not everyone can have a spotlight on them, so I went into this hoping to discover a little hidden gem, something I might be able to throw on when I'm in the good mood for a spooky atmosphere. This was the headspace I went into Oxide with, and I have to admit, it started off fairly strong. The game's opening cinematics looked pretty good for the price I paid. Nothing groundbreaking, but the production value was very serviceable. The game built itself as a combination of an escape room with action elements, and as an avid escape room fan, this got me really excited. I played some really good rooms and had a lot of really bad rooms, but the benefit of this being a video game is they can take the core concept of escape rooms and really bring them to the next level. Resident Evil games are basically escape rooms, so this game had a great blueprint it can work off of. And this is really where the game's heart is. I can tell the reverence the studio had for games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, from the survival horror aspects of it, the limited inventory, item boxes, to the dreamlike qualities in body horror. This game is a love letter to the genre as a whole. And unlike those games, this one doesn't ease you in. After the opening cutscene, which sets up some needed intrigue, you wake up naked, an important aspect, in a bathtub. Why are you here? Who put you here? All great questions that I couldn't wait to find out the answer to. When you finally gain control of your character, you quickly find out that you're already stuck in a puzzle. You're locked in the bathroom and have to find your way out of it. I'm not going to talk about all the puzzles in this game because that's a lot of the fun of a first playthrough, but there are a couple I want to mention to make points, and this first puzzle is one of them. Since you start off naked, you're limited on what you can carry because you only have one pocket, so you need to make careful use of it. The first thing we need to do before we leave is find our clothes, because we can't tramp around a hell world dong out. Demons have standards. While searching the bathroom, the first thing we find is the option to take a piss. I'm never gonna pass up one of these in a video game, just like in real life. You never want to get caught with pee in your pants just because you were impatient. So excuse me while I take care of this. Oh, what is that?
Looks like there's something.
I fucked up.
Oh, forget it. This is way too gross. Who would even think of doing something so disgusting?
This would have been my reaction in hindsight, but unfortunately, I wasn't thinking clearly. The best part about this? The key isn't needed to get out of here. This is basically just used to open small locks, completely useless right now. The reason I want to talk about this puzzle is because it introduces an interesting gameplay mechanic. Usually, you have a puzzle and the solution, but this one actually has two different ways you can solve it. The first thing we have to do is to get into this drawer to get our pants. Now, the way we're supposed to do this is to grab this lockbox, find the code, and then get the key in the drawer. Simple and effective. I was a dumbass and didn't notice the code. What I did notice though, was that I could force open the drawer. So I took that route assuming that's what I had to do. Sure, I may have cracked my head over the side of the tub, but at least I have my undies on. Now that we're fully dressed and aren't bleeding to death anymore, we're gonna waltz out of here with our real prize, the bathroom key. The reason this opening puzzle stood out to me was the fact that there are multiple ways to solve it. There was the standard horror game method of finding the clues and opening the boxes, and there was another simpler method of getting the same results. And the fact that you just rip open the drawer made me think of how, in certain puzzles, you can just brute force your way through it without actually solving it. If you need to open a lock, you can just try every combination. If you need to choose the right button, you can just reload until you get the right one. I was hoping this game was going to make a commentary on this through gameplay that people don't just fit into one box. That there are people who aren't as critically minded and don't want to follow the clues when they have an easier method themselves. If you've ever done an escape room with different people, you can see how they think in real time and how their own preferences can change how the game works and how different the experience can feel. I was really hoping the game would keep up this trend, maybe not with every puzzle. It seems like it would be a lot of work, and this is a really small dev team who probably didn't have a decade to work on it, but just enough that it feels like it impacted my experience and can maybe even offer some replay value, trying to figure out every way I can solve the same problem. I was, unfortunately, disappointed as I progressed through the game. The puzzles on the main path really started to dumb down after this, and they all relied on the gimmick of see the writing on the wall or in the note, use that to escape. Find the key and put it into the lock. If you find a lock, you can expect to find the solution in that very room. There's none of the traditional survival horror or even escape room tactics of giving you something in one room and making it apply to the other. The rare exception is if you find something in the hub that connects all of the rooms. You find a gas mask here that can be used in one of the rooms. There's no real lateral thinking when it comes to these solutions. It just feels like they didn't want anyone to be stuck on a certain puzzle for too long, and with a game as short as this one, that shouldn't be something they're really worried about. There was only one other puzzle that I thought required a little more thought or effort and even required multiple steps to complete, rather than just one or two that most rooms have. And once you reach what I would consider the halfway point, but it's probably closer to the end, the puzzles disappear almost entirely. In the second part, there was only one to solve and the rest was running or gunning through. After getting out of the bathroom, it won't take too long until we really experience the main gameplay of this title, and this is where I have the most problems with the game. The controls feel too restrictive. I'm almost fighting them to do what I want, and that's not how I want to feel while moving my character. I get this is a horror game, and sometimes less than intuitive controls can really add to the horror and atmosphere of the game, but when I can barely control how I look at an item to pick it up, that's how you know when a game is fucked up. I had to pull out my old strat of walking to the side rather than trying to look to the side because it makes it easier. It's less of a hassle. If looking around is this bad, I'm worried about the combat. So it's a good thing it's going to take us a while to actually get to it. Now I know what you're probably thinking. There are enemies right outside this door. Look at this motherfucker just crawling around. I know, I got excited and nervous all at once thinking I might be fucked right now. They threw me in the deep end with the puzzles immediately and now they're doing the same with combat. Well, it's too bad you don't get a chance to fight them. You don't even get to try to run away because the game throws you on an all-rails section where you don't get to control anything. This is basically just a cutscene, but you can't just have it be a cutscene to grab a sip of your drink or take a bite of your food, so they throw quick time events at you to keep you on your toes. My least favorite part of horror games, and they give it to you right off the bat. It brought me back to playing the OG RE4 and dying lazily to Krauser because apparently I'm not allowed to blink during cutscenes. This game barely has quick time events in it, just at the beginning and at the end. so I'm wondering why they bothered to include them in the first place. Just have me run through dodging these enemies. The area is fully modeled and interactable. Just spawn a couple of these body chomps and have me run around to this door. It would also give me a chance to explore with a little intensity. Once we button prompt our way into this door, the enemies despawn, and as far as I can tell, enemies never spawn in this hub as long as we don't die, which is a relief now that we have the gun. Why wouldn't I want to try out some combat right away? Better to burn off 5 or 10 minutes with this chilling in my pocket. At least now we can get back to the main draw of the game, the escape room elements. The puzzles and challenges in this game aren't too bad. They're nothing too special though. The opening puzzle with the different solutions really got my hopes up, so these following ones aren't so much bad as they are disappointing. Most of them have some very easy and straightforward solutions, so you can figure out just by looking at the walls or reading a note in the room. None of them have any strong skills or need of deduction. They're all very literal. You grab the right item and you put it in the right place. You don't even need to go to other rooms to find the solution or the final piece. Everything you need to shine is in this one room. Once you do that, you'll get a key to another room, and you keep going until you find your way out. This design isn't bad, it's very average. And unfortunately, that reflects the game overall. Oxide tries some interesting things, and I really appreciate it, I do. But once you see what they're trying and get the first high of it, you realize that the rest of what they have in store is still just very run-of-the-mill. The first time I died to this puzzle, I assumed it was very simple and that I can either figure it out by looking at the jars, or that I could just pick until I found the key. I was wrong. One of them had a small needle in it that caused me to bleed to death. I could have saved myself. I had some bandages I could use, but I wanted to see what would happen when I died. And what happened was I got to experience the worst voice actor I've seen in a game.
Have a purpose. My research and my technology will be the future.
No offense to the actor, but did the developer find him on Fiverr? I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he was given almost no direction and he had to try to figure it out on his own. I'm guessing this because the main character, Matt, has some moments where it feels like he's really giving it his all.
But how did I get here? And how did I get so banged up?
And moments where he feels like he's just mildly inconvenienced by being kidnapped and fighting for his life.
Oh, locked in again. I have to get out of here.
I've never played any of WildSphere's earlier games, so I'm hoping this just isn't a lack of talent, and it's more just a lack of experience. Actually, looking it up now, it looks like WildSphere is based out of Spain, so this could be an issue of not knowing how to direct English voice actors. If anyone played the game in Spanish, can you let me know if the acting in that is any better? The studio being based in Spain also makes a little more sense because this is a game that has something to say, but doesn't know how to say it. The dialogue at times feels really forced and clunky. There's almost no nuance when it comes to the themes they're trying to get across. They basically use these death scenes as a way to get the doctor to spout exposition at you, berating you with his beliefs of how people are too selfish and only concerned with themselves and their money. But it's funny that he's bragging about how he's above this and he's actually doing something by creating a certain technology, but then turns around and chastises you for using other technology he deems a waste. I'm not saying I disagree with the guy. I just think he doesn't need to be speaking down to me from his high horse. Dude, you kidnapped at least 2 people. Are you really the utmost authority on morality and value to society? This story is at its best when it's feeling like an edgy mid-2000s horror movie, one that's going for shock value in its gore and is appealing to the we live in a society crowd with its messaging and themes. It might not be objectively good, but there is some entertainment and value to be found if you're looking for it, and you may actually have to go looking for it. Most of this game's story is scattered throughout its notes and documents, a la Resident Evil, but where it differs is these scenes with the doctor I mentioned. They're the death cutscenes, so if you make all the right choices and don't die, you may never get a chance to talk to this man and learn about his my shit don't stink mentality. And yes, I said death cutscenes, plural. You get a different cutscene every time you die for a total of 4 times. This is because the main mechanic this game tries to use to separate itself from the crowd is by having a permadeath feature that changes how the future runs of this game is played. The doctor describes it as an experiment where he has to change the variables to make sure you don't get the same results. You might have died under these circumstances, but you might not in these. On paper, it's a really interesting concept that harkens to roguelikes. The difference is, instead of carrying things over to your next run to power yourself up, puzzles, items, or enemy locations may be changed to either give you a better advantage or a disadvantage. When you die and have to sit through this man's dry monologue, you wake up back in the bathroom of room 104. But this time, a letter in your name has been scratched out, denoting which run you're on. You basically only have 4 attempts to beat the game. in theory. But in reality, all this means is you only have 4 attempts before the game just sets you back to your first attempt. On one hand, this makes it really easy to get the best ending in the game without the changes really affecting your playthrough. If you die once, just kill yourself 3 more times and you're back on your first attempt to get through unscathed. It brings out a little bit of the fear in dying, seeing how you don't get to miss out on anything in this save file. And they really double down on this by using a very strict autosave system. Once you take any kind of life-threatening damage or dies, it saves as fast as it can. I don't think you can quit the game faster than it can save. Because of this, the game makes a very interesting choice to forego a difficulty system and instead uses this as a way to implement the difficulty. The first run is by far the easiest because of the lack of enemies. As you keep dying and respawning, the game makes certain puzzles easier, but adds more enemies to try to counter this so you can't just breeze through. This didn't bother me too much, but I can see some people taking an issue with it. If you die, chances are it's to an enemy, so just add more afterwards seems more like a punishment for being bad at the game rather than a helpful aid to guide you along, picking up the slack where you might be lacking. Needless to say, there's no adaptive difficulty in this game. Every enemy has its set spawn point in all of the runs, and there's no real variety in it based on how well you're playing. And this is one of the only games where I would argue a death can be at the fault of the game rather than the player. The aiming controls in this game feel so strict and rigid, I feel like I can't aim properly. There were a few times I'd been stuck in a corner with an enemy coming at me, and the time it takes me to properly aim at the human fly trap to make sure I'm not wasting ammo causes an unnecessary death. Once you fire off a shot, your gun has a recoil, and unlike most games, it's not easy to return your cursor back to the old position. It goes up slightly and stays, and when you try to move it down, it goes so fast on a stiff and rigid grid and you'll practically miss the enemy with your next shot. If you're playing on PC with a mouse and keyboard, this isn't a problem, but when I try with a controller, I either miss a shot because I can't move back quick enough, or the piranha dude just gains too much ground on me. It takes 5 or 6 shots to take a fucker down, causing a need to reload, and one bite can be fatal if you don't heal afterwards. If there's enough room in the area or she's too far away, it's not too big of an issue, but some of the room designs can be very cramped and there's no real way to maneuver around them. You also can't stagger her with a critical shot or by shooting certain body part. The combat isn't this game's strong suit, which makes me a little sad because it's one of my favorite ways to form strategies in survival horror games. In this game, if you're playing on console, try it more like a stealth game. Obviously, these bitches don't have eyes, so they can't see you. But if you bump into one, they'll know exactly where you are and will be able to follow you, so be careful. Speaking of Big Mouth over here, the game is very light on enemy designs. At the start of the game, you're introduced to 2 types, Miss Leg Day over there, and these weird torso mouth creatures. The first one is...
Call me evil.
Creative. And I have no idea what these things are called. I haven't seen them referred to as anything in the game, and the internet is very sparse on information about this game, so I've just been referring to them as whatever I could think of in the moment, which makes them a little hard to talk about because this is the main enemy you'll see for most of the game. The first half of this game in your first run only has these enemies, and there's a second type that you won't ever see unless you die. They're these plant-like bulbs that like to chill on floors and walls. When you get close to them, they spit out poisonous spores. Like the torso mouths, they're easy to sneak around, and unlike the belly mouth, they can't do anything if you shoot them. So as long as no other enemies are nearby, you should have no issue taking them out. There are other enemies in the game, but they're more like bosses and only reside in one area of the game. The lack of enemy variety really makes encounters feel a little stale. You just about never encounter 2 in the same area, so if you just kill the one enemy and make your way through. They stop becoming a threat at one point and just become an annoyance to deal with. This game isn't long, so I would have killed for just one more enemy type in the main portion of the game. Just something to add a little variety in the combat that I admittedly usually skipped anyways. While the game was mostly enjoyable, there were plenty of places where I found this game lacking. Can the Platinum Journey pick up the slack? Let's unlock the next section and find out. Oxide Room 104 has a total of 32 trophies, and more than half of them are your basic play the game style of trophies. By the time you beat your first playthrough, it's almost guaranteed you'll have about 16 of them. Unless you're a god tier gamer and get a flawless playthrough, never needing an antidote or to use bandages. For those of us who are fairly average, these are all part of the journey. The rest of the trophies you'll probably have to be on the lookout for, and because of the nature of the permadeath system, I would call all of these missable if you make it past certain points in the game. The trophies you should be on the lookout for throughout the game are the random notes and journal entries scattered around. They're more like littered throughout, considering you can barely step into a room without having the wind blow these scraps in your face. The story isn't presented through cutscenes because there are no other characters aside from the doctor to talk to, so this is the only way for the developer to let you know what's going on. There are 4 different trophies for each category of documents. They're all sorted by who's writing the notes. You got Eva, Evil, the Doctor, and strangest of all, you have Matt's documents. Apparently Matthew over here can't remember anything that's happened to him in like the past 5 minutes. So you're finding all of these notes written by him, for him, I'm guessing. It makes sense by the end of the game, but as you're trudging along your first playthrough, it makes it seem like a forced way to get some character development or insight into who this man is, instead of having him deliver the information himself, either to other characters or to himself during certain situations. For a hot second, I thought it was a different character named Matt until I stopped being a dumbass. The most ridiculous of these notes are when they're signed by Evil, the macabre gaggle of body parts that is stalking you throughout the game. This wordless, groaning antagonist really has a lot to say when pen comes to paper. Not really when tongue comes to lips though. Her notes don't expand on the story or her purpose. They're just there to let you know she's evil and that she's in pain, or wants to cause pain. Even now, I'm not entirely sure. The game is short enough that I recommend just spending the 1.5 to 2 hours of your first playthrough with no guide, just living in the moment. Then, when you start up again, look up a guide for the documents and just go through. Just one thing I need you to remember is that you can only get all of the doctor's notes on the first playthrough, so if you die, you need to waste the time killing yourself another 3 times to get another chance. For trophy-related reasons later, if you die on your first cleanup run, just ride it through and look for the other notes. Chances are you're gonna need to come back to this death cycle again anyways. Speaking of trophies you should get without dying, 373 and Sly as a Fox are best attempted on your first run. You can even stack them both on the same playthrough. 373 requires you to unlock every available room in the motel. There are 3 main paths you can take at the beginning of the game depending on if you can find all 3 keys. The first one is the key to room 111. It's required for you to take to get out of the storage room, and most people may just follow this path without finding the other 2. The second path can be found by going over to this table and taking the hook to reach the key to room 210 that's floating in the pool over here. The third path is probably the trickiest and can be found by grabbing the shovel, then heading over to this small stone circle. You can find it in the small nook a torso mount spawned in during the QuickTime events. Digging this up gives you the key to room 101. It also unlocks the He Who Seeks Finds trophy. No matter which path you take, they all lead to you getting into room 203 and then getting to the 3rd floor to continue the rest of the game. After getting to the 3rd floor, you're gonna find 2 keys. Just make sure you hit both of these rooms before going through the gate. Once you hit the reception area, you can't go back to get any of the rooms you missed. Luckily, after you grab those first 3 keys, it's pretty straightforward. Each room you unlock has a key to the next room in it after a very brief puzzle. You aren't locked out of the trophy if you die. All of the rooms are still available on the second run. A couple of guides might tell you you can't get into room 209 on a second run, but I had no issue getting into the room without the construction name tag. The only reason I recommend doing this on the first run is because there are less enemies. Most of the rooms will either not have a creature in it at all, or it'll have the monster locked in the bathroom. And as long as you don't open it, you can avoid it altogether. It's those reasons I also recommend doing Sly as a Fox on this run as well. The trophy requires you to beat the game without firing a single bullet. Pretty standard trophy for a horror game, but Oxide makes it a little harder because you have no melee weapon to defend yourself, so you'll have to avoid combat altogether. Luckily, it's also very easy to sneak around enemies in this game. As long as you don't bump into them or run, they'll never find you. If you decide not to pair these 2 trophies together, I recommend grabbing the hook and going the route of room 210. Then, when you get to room 109, you can find an extra life that'll save you if you get caught without a bandage. Then, after you get to the 3rd floor, choose room 305 because there are no monsters in that one. Then it's just a straight dash to the end of the game. If you do this after dying once, I think the shovel route is the easiest that I played. In room 206, the monster is locked in the bathroom, so the only one I had to deal with was room 108, which you can just stealth around. There is a torso mount in room 203 if you do this though, and some poison plants in the reception area. So while the motel run might be easier in the second cycle, the rest of the game has less creatures in the first cycle. Just depends on your preference. The first 4 I'm going to talk about can all be done in the first room of the game. Not just room 104, but the bathroom specifically. The first thing you're going to want to do is to turn on the radio to listen to this banger of a song.
Say to moon, hide your secrets, know they do. Know that all away from you, in your way.
Not the greatest I've heard, but there's something I find mesmerizing about the instrumentals. My brain likes to hear it. If you let the song fully play, you'll earn the soundtrack trophy. I mentioned brute force earlier, and the way to get this trophy is to tug on the drawer until it opens up and sends you into a coma. If you didn't want to do it this way, you can actually solve the puzzle to unlock the drawer. Grab your pants, the key, and the let's play a game trophy. Now that we're actually outside of the bathroom, we're gonna skip through most of the game until we get to the dining room section next to the reception area. We got flammable shit, we got a fire. It's pretty self-explanatory what we have to do next.
Fuck!
I didn't say it was a smart choice. A better choice would be to throw it at the plant and earn a trophy instead of a trip back to the beginning. It goes without saying that this section will have spoilers, considering I'm talking about the endings in the game. This is where most of your playthrough is probably going to be. There are 4 different endings you can get, and they all have to be on different playthroughs. There's no making manual saves and reloading them to do something different, because the only determining factor in which ending you get is how many times you died. The best ending you could get is just running straight through with no deaths, which will net you the Real Escape and the Matthew's Revenge trophy. For Real Escape, you just have to get the good ending, but for Matthew's Revenge, you have to interact with the doctor while he's trying to reach you. You'll get a prompt to get your revenge and just enjoy the little cutscene. Now all you have to do is start the game again, die, beat it, start again, die, start again, die, beat it, and continue this pattern until you earn the Matthew's Mistakes trophy. The only reason this trophy was irritating was the fact that you have to see the opening of the game a total of 10 times. You'll become an expert at getting out of this bathroom. You'll start inadvertently creating speedrun tactics just to make it faster. The issue isn't how long it takes. At most, it'll take you about 5 minutes to get to the run you need. My issue is just the needless repetition and the unskippable cutscenes. Every time you die, you have to listen to the bullshit the doctor spiels, and you have to watch Matthew get out of the tub. Throw on some music or a podcast and just zone out. Grab yourself a snack and get cozy. I use these as a talk to my wife and pet my cat break. It's not bad enough for me to tell you to stay away from it, but it's more dull than it needs to be. If you followed my recommendations, then the next trophy you get should be the Platinum. Oxide Room 104 is a game that stuck around in my head after I finished playing it. Unfortunately, after I platinumed it, I was left with all the disappointing and frustrating thoughts I had throughout the game. I think it's mostly from the amount of time I had to spend playing the opening section of the game because of all the accidental deaths. That's why a good chunk of this review may have seemed negative. But when I picked it back up again to grab additional footage, I was reminded of the fun times I had. Like a diamond in the rough, this game does have decent ideas and mechanics under the lackluster control system, and to me, that's what's most important for a game. Did I have fun while playing it? And for Oxide, the answer is yes. It's easy for me to overlook the bad combat when I rarely had to do it. The core enjoyment of the game is solving the puzzles and exploring this haunted motel. Are the puzzles fairly simple? Yes. But that doesn't negate the enjoyment you can get from solving them. And with how short the game is, none of the basic problems really start to grate on you. The game has solid foundations that just need the gameplay issues on controller to be tweaked. If there's one thing I think the sequel needs to fix, it's the controls on the consoles. The biggest hit this game has on it is being $25. For an almost $30 game, I don't think the hour and a half, maybe less, you get from it is worth the price. If the game did something outstanding or revolutionary, I can understand why it would ask such an amount. But as the game stands, I don't think it was a good choice. The game is discounted all the time though. I got it for $5 or less, so if you plan on getting it, wait for a price cut. My rating for Oxide Room 104 is, it's a game. Not great, not bad, just a game. If you have other games you plan on playing right now, put this one in the backlog and just wait until you have an opening. It's not worth putting any games you're excited for on holdover. The trophy list, however, I would rate as average. I'm not usually a fan of a platinum making you play a game more than twice, but this game is short enough it isn't really an issue. The only reason it took me longer and irritated me was due to my own fault. I kept dying at easy spots I shouldn't have. I could probably have cut my overall playtime down by an hour or so if I didn't have to keep replaying the opening over and over again. It's the same thing for missable trophies. If this was a full-length game, it would irk me to have to keep a lookout for them. But with a short game, just fly through the next couple runs and follow a guide. Nothing too bad. None of the trophies are egregiously bad, and none of them are exceptionally great or fun. It's pretty run-of-the-mill. If you're an avid trophy hunter, I'd recommend you going for the platinum. If you're an average gamer, I'd recommend attempting it to get a little more value from your purchase, plus to see how the game can change on the different cycles. Now's the time for you guys to tell me your thoughts. What did you think about the game if you've played it, and what do you think about the trophy list? Do you disagree with my thoughts about multiple playthroughs and missable trophies? Do you think this game is worth almost $30? Did the sequel fix any of the issues with it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you all in your motel room tonight. take care.